Hi everyone, it's Jan from Jan Plans Things, and today I've got a paint with me video that I'll be doing of Humphrey as a little Monstera plant. So to start off, I've just shown you guys on the screen now the materials that I'll be using. I might be switching out the brush every now and again with the White Knight's Zero brush, which is a little bit thinner for details. But to start off, don't do what I do what I say. What I'm doing now is I'm just wetting this leaf with water, but my water's a bit dirty. You should probably use clean water for this, but what I'm doing is I'm making a yellow gradient from top to bottom, and it's a little bit easier if you pre-wet the paper first when you do this. So that makes it easier for the watercolor to blend. Now you can't do this when you're painting in a journal because the paper can't hold this much water, but you can do this when you're using traditional watercolor paper. I'm using a block of watercolor paper, which means it's already pasted down and I don't have to worry about it buckling. But if you're using a traditional paper with loose sheets, you should tape it all the way around first so that it doesn't crinkle so much while you paint. So what I like to do is I like to lay down the water first, and then using that I paint with the pigments and I pull them into each other. Sometimes I just wet the brush a little bit more to blend a little bit. And then I find that it creates really nice patterns, and the watercolor will bloom and kind of variegate while you paint, depending on the type of pigment you're using. And I think you should just embrace it. I mean, unless you're using pure synthetic colors that don't have a lot of variation in them, you're not going to get a perfectly smooth blend of color anyway. But I find that the little blotchiness and shadows you get when you're painting with watercolor kind of is what makes it really, really lovely in the first place. So you should kind of just embrace it. When I was painting with the greens, I was actually only using two colours. I was using a quinacridone gold and then also a phthalo blue green shade. And using those, I just had the yellow at the bottom and the blue at the the yellow at the top, the blue at the bottom on my plate, and I just blended them together. I did the exact same things with the browns. I had like a brown, I can't remember, it was like a brown ochre, and then also like a more golden earthy colour at the top, and I used those to blend. And I have them in two spots because kind of like you have the original pigment at the bottom, and the top one has like the more the lighter color, and that means you can pull from each of the pools of color depending on what you need, and use that to kind of like blend the colors while you're painting. I guess that's also why I like having a plate, so I kind of have like a large blending area of colours so I can pull from whichever part I need, and then I can also kind of dip it in like the pool of brown or the pool of green and pull from whatever colour. I said pull a lot. I'm sorry, that was a mess. But you can kind of get what I mean here. So with the browns and everything, I just darken them with a lot of the grey. So I pre-mix a lot of my grey in advance, and then I use that to tone everything. So I've just now switched over to the fine lining brush, which Humphrey loves. He always gets attracted when that brush comes out. But as you can see, what I'm doing is, because the paint has dried a little bit, it means that the pigment has actually got a little bit darker because a little bit of the water has evaporated. So I'm just dipping that thinner brush into the evaporated paint, which is now a little bit darker with a bit more pigment in it, and I'm using that to line the leaves. So with the greener leaves, I'm going to use mostly the phthalo green, and I can dip directly into the pan if I want a really strong colour, but I'm also adding a little variance of brown or yellow to the edges as well, just kind of to soften the outline so it's not purely just one colour. If you're kind of outlining with the whole single colour, looks a little bit monotonous, but by adding a little bit of glow, a little bit of brown, a little bit of green to where you're outlining everything, it just makes that variation look a little bit more interesting. So where the leaves are a little bit more gold, I'll use brown to outline that part of the leaf, and I'll use green to outline the more richer green parts of the leaves. So the browns that I'm using are a raw umber and a burnt sienna. I just realised how hard it is to talk about a voiceover when you're basically just painting with three colours. But I guess that's what's really lovely about watercolours. You can blend quite a few different tones depending on, just with a very basic palette. So you don't ever need too many colours, unless of course you're like me and you just like collecting them for science. I don't know, is it science or just obsession? I'm still in the middle of my swatching project. So I'm using the raw umber, mix it with a little bit of grey to darken a little bit to blend with the pot. You see, I was a little bit naughty on the right hand side of the pot. You can kind of see how where I actually wanted to shade it, it's gone lighter. It's because I put too much water on that part of the page. So the water actually lifts a lot of the pigment off the surface of the paper. So, you know, that's something you can be aware of. Like if you're moving fast and you've made a mistake, you can put more water on and lift it off with a tissue or something. But also if you're impatient, that might also happen as well. It's not such a big deal. When it dries, you can just go over it again with another coat, and that also kind of helps with making it a little bit more vibrant anyways. Now you can see it actually looks quite nice with a coloured tinted outline instead of a dark black outline. I mean, sometimes I do like a black outline, but I think when I'm doing like a little soft type painting like this, I prefer having a matching outline, so I like to mix them to you know, I like to mix them so they're tonally a little bit more similar. The black one gives it a nice stronger punch. So it really depends what you're going for in terms of the aesthetic. So with the ribbon as well, what I'm doing is I've just used Faber blue, but this time I'm using the blue shade instead of the green shade, and then I'm mixing it with a little bit of the pre-grain that I already had on my plate, which is just a basic plate. And then I'm just dipping a little bit of yellow at the top. So the ribbon was actually quite wet while I was applying the colour, and it just runs through, and you kind of see the paint will granulate and bloom, and depending on how the pigments react to each other, and I just call them all happy accidents. So I've just slowed this down a little bit for you to see. I'm just using the grey that I've pre-mixed, and I have put a little dab of the green in the grey to tone it a little bit. And what I'm doing is I'm just going over one side of the leaf with that grey. Now, in a lot of previous paintings, you would have seen me do the grey first. This time around I did it second. I think by putting the grey on first, you might get a little bit more of a poppy colour, but I didn't mind having toning it afterwards because I wasn't quite sure which way I wanted to shade it just yet. So I just picked half of the leaf. I tried to be consistent, and by just adding that grey and that little dab of green to that grey, I could add some variation to the leaf. And because it's quite diluted already, you can see that the undertone has already come through, and it doesn't overwhelm with the shading. So I'm just going over the ribbon now. I'm actually dipping straight into the pan to get a really nice rich blue to go around, and just going through and adding a little bit of the details. So I find that if you are struggling a little bit with the toning, the grey is actually better, because sometimes when you're shading with like another brown or something, it doesn't give the same light quality across the entire picture. So it is a little bit better to shade with like a single tone, just to add some uniformity to the lighting. Humphrey's come over just when I'm starting to paint his name, and that made it very difficult because you're trying to paint details and the cat's tapping your brush, so I gave up. So I've actually switched now to watercolor pencils, which is like my cheat way to get everything done when I'm just a little bit, I just want a little bit of pop of color and just like easier shading. And that's also because of the texture that watercolor pencils give that I do quite like. I find them a little bit strong. If the paper's a little bit damp as well, the pigment comes off very, very strong, which I like, which makes it really easy to tone everything up. I actually tried to use my Sakura jelly roll there, and I realized it's been months since I touched my jelly roll. Thank you, working from home and overworking in general. But I gave up soon afterwards, and I actually switched to a Winsor Newton white gouache when this just wasn't picking up the pigment fast enough, because I was just getting too much of the wet watercolor on the tip. But anyway, that is today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really, really fun painting something like this. I think it's really, really cute. And yeah, it's been great to upload again, and I hope to do it a little bit more regularly. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys soon. Bye!